Well, welcome back, everybody, to Indy Design Week. You might remember me from earlier. Anyways, I hope you got a chance to get some good foods in your bellies, and I hope you took the time to network. And if you watched any of our videos, I hope you enjoyed. And shout out again to Indy Design Week for putting on such an awesome event so far. Lots of great speakers with lots of awesome information, and our next panel is no different. So here's what we know. We have a wonderful design community in Indiana, but is it sustainable? And that's exactly what our next panel is going to talk about. So please help me welcome Joey Ponce, Shauta Marsh, Lourenzo Giple, Jingo de la Rosa, and Dr. Kelli Morgan as they discuss the sustainability of the Indianapolis design community.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Indy Design Week, for having us. I'm very excited to host this panel. My name is Joey Ponce. I'm the Community Engagement Director with AIGA Indy. So I really wanted to get these four incredible people together to just kind of have a conversation about, as was mentioned, the Indianapolis art and design community, how we're doing, especially under the lens of the last year, and just kind of get some, honest dialogue going about how we're doing. I'd like to go ahead and have each of the panelists just introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about how you spend your day. So let's go ahead and start. Dr. Kelli Morgan, kick us off.
Cool. Thank you, Joey, for having me. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Kelli Morgan, and how I've been spending my days recently is on Zoom calls, day in and day out, which is a good thing, because the quarantine and COVID and my resignation have just has just opened up a whole new door, for my career and just other opportunities, to advise on anti-racism policies and practices and that kind of thing. So spending most of my days on the phone.
Cool. Let's jump over to Jingo de la Rosa, if you'd like to.
Thanks, Joey, and thanks for having me. Real treat to be here with these fine people. My name is Jingo de la Rosa. It's like bingo with a J. That's how you say my name. I'm an illustrator, educator, and community artist. I teach at both Heron School of Art and Design and Butler University. And I also lead the volunteer core group with Creative Mornings. And yeah, among other things. And yeah, those are probably the ways I spend my days. I'm mostly in school these days, but thankfully we're wrapping up the semester too. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Shauta Marsh? Oh, Shauta, you're on mute. Whoever has a bingo card going.
Sorry. So I'm the co-founder of Big Car, one of the co-founders and director of programming and exhibitions there. I'm artist, researcher, writer, curator, and spend my days doing anything from cleaning the toilets at Tube to writing grants and organizing public art projects. So doing marketing. So being on helping run a small arts nonprofit is requires being able to do a lot of and a little bit of everything.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely expand on that in a bit. And finally, but last but not least, Lourenzo Giple, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much again, Joey, and thanks for the panel. Lourenzo Giple, urban designer, aspiring architect, educator, researcher. I've spent the last year between a balance of working from home because my profession has not slowed down. It's actually ramped up on the architecture and design side. So working crazy hours and balancing kids and a lot of conversation as it relates to racial recognition and as it relates to public space. So,
excellent. Well, thank you everybody for being here with us. Also to our audience, please feel free to ask questions in the comp Q&A. I'll go ahead and do my best to make sure that I get to ask those here. But I would like to go ahead and stay with you for a bit, Lorenzo. We kind of had this conversation about work picking up, and I'm really curious about that lens for yourself. did the last year turn out the way that you expected?
No.
I mean, right, for anybody.
Yeah, no. In overall, right, the last year work-wise has been very, very busy, and that has been a fantastic thing. I've worked for, well, technically now 2 companies, right, that we were extremely busy, and it was, I mean, early on in the pandemic, it was this concern of, are we going to be busy, right? And then boom, it hit, and because people were at home, people wanted renovations done quickly. So I used to be with Rotman Collier Architects, and that firm primarily focuses on residential. And when I left, we had a waiting list about 3 or 4 months long of projects. Now with Blackline as a project director, and it's still the same, right? Because within architecture, what happens is all of the funding for projects are done prior to the projects, for the most part, being finalized. So when the pandemic hit, a lot of people had projects in line in the pipeline. And so it's just been nuts. But it's been a good kind of a busy.
How about for you, Shauta? I know from the lens of an arts nonprofit, how did everything go? And what kind of, I guess, what was the energy like throughout the last year?
It was very uncertain. You don't know if you're going to be able to keep, already you are, as a small arts nonprofit operating with a skeleton crew, just the bare minimum of staff. And when COVID hit and we were like, are we going to be able to pay our staff? Like our fund, there were so many questions. It was basically this whole time has been limbo, which is a special sort of hell. And will we, so we were able to make it through without losing a lot of our full-time staff, but we had to furlough a lot of like our coffee shop employees, and it's been but then I'm still we were still lucky, we were still really lucky. We ended up getting support from the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts for exhibits, because that's one of the things we do is commissioning. So when a pandemic hits and people's public health is, at the forefront, a lot of times the arts gets cut in terms of funding. So it was really dicey for a period of time. I was like, am I going to be able to commission shows? Am I not? Are we going to be able to keep our staff? Are we not? But it ended up working out better than we thought. So
that's really great to hear. Dr. Kelli, you have an interesting world into art. Also, as a curator, you just have an interesting lens in this last year. So I'm curious to get your thoughts as well on how the last year went for you and also the spaces that you were in.
Yeah, kind of like Shauta was saying, I was really lucky, or like, I like to say blessed, because, I quit my job right in the middle of the pandemic. And it's not the only job. I have a very multifaceted career, but it was like, it was definitely my health insurance, right? Like my foundational position. And one thing about, I am definitely not a Charles Venable, apologist or a supporter of Jerry Wise, but one thing about the two of them, that they did do, was create a really substantial culture and reality of financial security for Newfields. So we weren't facing layoffs. At least, I'm sure they had a conversation about it, but, that wasn't a thing. They were really trying to figure out, how to maintain staff. But on the flip side of that, the culture, very toxic and very discriminatory when it came to race, class, and gender. So as a staff, as a whole, we were all kind of under duress. and there was no way, that I could, like, my sort of cries and fights about it, internally just weren't going anywhere. They were just falling on deaf ears or getting erased. And I was like, okay, I have to do something else. This is really affecting my mental health. And it took me about, 2 months, just to build up the courage to leave because of the pandemic. And so I did so, publicly. And my national network, just really kind of came to my aid. So there were opportunities like waiting for me, so to speak, that I didn't even know were possible. So it really opened my career up into a totally different arena of consulting and advising on something that I've done in my curatorial career, since I started out, at the Birmingham Museum of Art with like anti-racist, and critical race curatorial practice. But it's turned into the central thread of my practice now, that I hadn't really structured. I hadn't really built, a framework for it. It was just something that I kind of did, right? Or I just kind of took for granted. And so the pandemic, has just allowed me to really structure that and to offer it to K through 12 schools, to different universities, different institutions, museums and institutions and arts institutions. So it just really expanded, my reach, in a way that I don't think would have happened without it.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to a couple of the points that you made. So let's go ahead and I do want to jump over to you, Jingo, to talk about your experience. And you kind of from two different angles, one as an educator and the other as under the lens of Creative Mornings, because Creative Mornings it's something every creative person in Indy really looks forward to every month. And that had to have changed. So what were those two spaces like?
Well, from an educational standpoint, I got furloughed in a couple of my jobs last year, which was not surprising at all. I thought it was necessary for those organizations, but at the same time, it flat out sucked, losing those jobs, because I loved it. Like, teaching is a part of who I am and part of what I do. So that wasn't fun, but eventually, got back into it later in the fall and this spring. So, but still, the adjustments that had to be made going back to teaching was very, very hard. Like as we all know, we all had to do online teaching, not just teaching, but everything else, meetings, one-on-ones with students, everything was online. So that made it especially hard, because it felt like everything I had to triple my energy for something that was necessary. Which was exhausting in a lot of ways. But from a Creative Morning standpoint, I feel like we're doing good, actually. I mean, everything right now is online. I do know that some people are probably itching to do in-person gatherings, but there's another group of people that would prefer not to do that. So we're currently in a state of trying to decide how do we move forward, moving on, especially when the warmer months arrive. But also, our team has talked about maintaining the online aspect of it, just for the sake of accessibility for everyone, especially those who can't get out of their office. So I think that's one good thing. It'll require a lot of work, but I think we'll get used to it. We're getting more and more used to it. So, but I think the name of the game was just adapting to it and living with that.
Absolutely. Cool. So, Dr. Kelli, I want to come back to something that we had talked about, and that was, I'm curious, when you were honestly dealing with those 2 months that were a big struggle for you at Newfields, what was the local support like for you here? Because you did mention after you left, and it was a very public break, you received a lot of national support, but I'm really curious what the local community of Indianapolis did for you, especially as someone who's not from Indy.
Yeah, it was wonderful, to be honest. I have to also say, Joey, that like it was such a fight, for many of us on staff, that the local community didn't really know, right, all of the ins and outs, right? Or I would say the local community didn't know how bad it actually was. There was only a few people. So for me, my local community that, were kind of like feeding me, in that moment, almost literally, people like Denicia Malone and Christopher West and like Michael Kaufman. My IUPUI, community, so the Africana Studies program, faculty and staff, the folks in museum studies, I think about Laura Holzman and Elizabeth Kreider Reed, people who I was really being transparent with, because my resignation, I think I was number 5, in this sort of exodus of mid-level, staff, of color. And one senior manager, right? So it was that moral support, which was wonderful. But then there was also this, like, you have to say something, Kelli, because I was really struggling with like, forget it, like I'm gonna just quit, and like Jingo was like, I have my teaching opportunities or my, my teaching situations, so I'm gonna just teach and I just need to get out of here. And pretty much everybody, Joey, from the folks on the Arts Council, to, again, my IUPUI community, and then my colleagues at Newfields, they were like, you have to say something, like, so many people have been leaving, haven't said anything, like, you have to say something. And so it was like giving me the courage, they were giving me the boost to not just to publish the essay, but to then publish my resignation letter too.
Thank you for sharing that. Shauta, from your perspective as a nonprofit in the arts, you also mentioned the Andy Warhol Foundation coming in and really stepping in to help. What was it like? What was the support like locally?
I don't think that there wasn't, usually it's not big car looking for support from the community, but looking for ways to support artists in the community. So that was the main thing, is like, how do we keep supporting artists here so that they can meet basic needs or not move somewhere else, and that we don't lose, the creative class and capital that has been building for years, and that we've honestly, like, even before COVID, we lost a lot of art spaces before. So that was really the main thing that we were facing, is like, how do we support the arts community going through this, when, like I said, a lot of times artists end up in the back seat when it comes to like a pandemic, because there's people dying and they're like, not too worried about the arts. So we ended up having 2 programs that the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts helped us with, which the other one was the power plant emergency grants, which we were able to give out 60 $1,000 grants to support visual artists. And we did limit it to visual artists. At that time there was, and it's not that I don't consider musicians artists, I do, but there were still like Zoom concerts happening, but there weren't like venues open for visual artists to sell their wares other than through like Instagram and different things like that. And then some people just, having to make art that they want to make and then also market their own work through Instagram and figure out how to price their work. A lot of artists in our community aren't yet like equipped or don't have that input. And then also, what's the appetite for buyers during the pandemic? Come to find out, people are working on their houses. So actually they were buying art art during that time. But, so that's been, how do we stay relevant as an organization that, caters to our visual artists, and that was what our, that's what our goal was during the pandemic. And we were lucky that we had a funder to help us with that.
Absolutely. When you and I were talking, I kind of said it was like that scared parent syndrome. Like you want to help your kid, but you also don't want them to see how like scared you are of the situation that you're in. And being an art nonprofit, you are supporting so many artists in one way or another that you want to make sure you can continue to provide that. So yeah, definitely appreciate everything that you all have done for the art community. Lourenzo, I want to jump over to you because of all of us, you really do work mostly like business to business. Like you are the guy who is putting a lot of stuff behind the scenes together, and somehow we all still know you everywhere. So like with your involvement with the city market and everything, I'm curious what you're seeing from the city side of things. Like what was support like for the organizations that you were involved in?
So it was difficult because from the city's perspective, their first reaction was to get things under control as far as the health department and getting things in place, the necessary guidelines in place for businesses and things like that, right? And once that was in place, then it quickly came to became, okay, how can we support the organizations that for the most part have been helping us, right? Because it's one thing to put restrictions and all of these other pieces in place and to talk about social distancing, that people need to social distance from each other. But it's another thing to then realize that the more that people are within their spaces, the more that the arts is needed, because it is a release, and it's a way to help us deal with, for lack of a better term, all of the stuff of our lives, right? So then it quickly became this piece of how do we support all of that? At least from the organizations that I'm involved in, and just from what I saw, the city did a good job, mainly with the restaurant industry, to try to provide spaces. So one of the things that they did on Mass Ave was shutting off all of the parking along Mass Ave to open it up so that people could, businesses could allow more people within their space outside and things like that. It showed, I think, the public that the ability to lose car spaces, which it's something that we've all been talking about for years and years and years, right? But again, we cannot just dismiss cars because we need them in some way, shape, or form. As it relates to other arts organizations, I think the city did a good job of supporting other organizations to help those organizations. And what I mean by that is because the city was so involved in dealing with the pandemic, they could not actually support arts organizations the way I believe they would have liked to. So they put that on the supporting the organizations like the Chamber, the LISC, and all of these other organizations, and Big Car, right? All the other organizations that support arts and the Arts Council, to basically say, hey, we have federal dollars that we're receiving. Here you go. Support the people that we need, because it's needed. So.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to open this question up to anybody. I kind of want to get down to the root of like, how do we do? How do we feel as an art and design community now going into what I mean, it's hopefully the tail end of this, but how do we feel we did? I feel like, Jingo, something that you mentioned was everybody kind of had to focus on taking care of themselves a bit, like going back to taking care of yourself a bit. So now that we're starting to come out of that, how did we do? If anybody wants to answer and kind of take that one over, just curious. I will pick on someone.
All right. Honestly, in my opinion, we did okay.
Expand,
And
obviously.
yes, because a lot of the issues that we have and that came to the forefront of the pandemic, these were all things that we were aware of that needed to be fixed, and we could have fixed them before we got there, before they became a problem. So that's why I say for example, okay, housing. You know me well, Joey, that housing is very close to my heart and is the heart of majority of the work that I do, right? We've known for years and years we've had a problem with affordability and attainable housing in the city of Indianapolis. Until it became a major issue, nobody really wanted to resolve it. Or at least I would say we did not think we could resolve it, right? So, and that's just from that perspective. Food insecurity, all of these other pieces that we know have been issues for years and years and years that we could have been working on years and years and years, right? Instead of chipping away at it, or even just things that we never thought was possible, i.e. working from home. And as an entire world, right? We saw this leapfrog of technology that has happened that allows us to still do all of the things. I mean, personally, I live by a mantra of with constriction comes innovation, which has been wonderful. But again, we do not need to be at the last moment to solve all of these problems. So I'm going to finish my monologue now.
But we are pretty good at doing that, is being reactionary versus, people don't really listen to people who are calling at the giant problem up ahead. So I'm curious, Shauta, Big Car, and some people know this, some people don't, but Big Car has a hold on the real estate side of things as well with artists. So how did that go over the last year? How was that arm of Big Car doing?
It went really well. I was, and when it came with the affordable artist housing that we have, it's not limited to visual artists, it's musicians, it's social practice artists, it's sound musicians. So they did everything from, doing food drives to online Zoom vegan cooking classes, dance classes. And, we finally pretty much almost have the program full, and how the program works is the rentals are 30% off market rate, and the houses run through a community land trust type model, where it's co-owned between Riley Area Development, Big Car, and the owner, the artist who resides in those 5 homes. We ended up expanding the program into rentals because what we were coming across was a lot of artists aren't able to get approved for a $40,000 to $50,000 loan because artists don't have, they might meet the income requirements for the loan, but it's coming from freelance work that the banks don't want to honor. They might fit within the credit score to approve the loan, but they might have maybe something on their credit report they didn't know about that's incorrect. There's been roadblocks to getting artists to own homes, and that's really important for the financial security of the creative class of the city, is that they do own their homes, that they're able to stay here, that they're able to pass something on to their children if they have children. So, and then how the program works is 16 hours a month. It's like if you received a deal with your landlord to refinish the floors in exchange for a discount. Well, instead of refinishing those floors in the home and improving the actual structure, the artists in the affordable artist housing program, who I need to mention, we do have Denicia Monet to thank for helping us create this program. she's like the mama of it. But that, you know, they instead work within the community to build it up to help the community, the Garfield Park community, accomplish what it wants. Now, because of the pandemic, usually at first we were going to focus on Garfield Park. Well, at this point, it's like you're either in your home or you're like Zoom, and it could be all over the world. So, you know, when they were doing their Zoom programming, you know, sometimes you'd have people, you know, tune in from overseas or something or whatnot. So and then it's a communal situation. It's based off of communal living. So there's access to the radio station that we have. There's access to the wood shop. They can use the lawnmowers. So that's, I think that I really feel like that we have great artists in the program, and they're amazing and handled the pandemic as well as could be expected.
Joey, you're muted.
Boom. I think that it's becoming a common thread, right? That all of us interpersonally in our support systems, we have really great people that we can rely on and go to. And as you start to move up, it kind of starts to break down. And that is basically, Dr. Kelli, I'm going to pick on you for this one, is where are we failing from the top?
Yeah, like absolutely, Joey. Because like, so to kind of string that together, right? You know, I think for the initial question of like, how did the community do? And, you know, in sort of my world and my involvement in the Indiana arts community or Indianapolis arts community, it's like they did really well, right? Because the public pressure got Charles Venable out of there, but it also exposed the institution for just like the behemoth ulcer, you know, that it has been, you know, on the Indianapolis arts community. That was something that was always just such a struggle for me, you know, as associate curator of American art, because the fervor, right, and the community and the movement, you know, on the ground in the Indianapolis arts community, I think is amazing. And you have this big weighted place, you know, this island of a place that's just like the burden on everybody because it is so unhelpful. Right. It is just, and it's in the way, you know, it's just like so in the way. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the senior staff and the board of trustees, for that matter, you know, board of trustees, super conservative, and they have no purview, right? They have no sense of what real community engagement looks like, and how to actually carry that out. So much so that those of us, you know, in the institution, be it at the curatorial level, or, you know, interpretation public programs, you know, we worked outside of community outreach, right, to enact particular community engagement because community outreach was racist, you know, and useless. You know, when I first got here, or when I first got to Indy, you know, there were several people, you know, that said to me, I didn't respond to your email because I saw Newfields, right, you know, in the signature line. Like, we don't deal with that institution. You know, when we were working on the community meal, you know, there were several people who wouldn't eat, who literally stated, we will not come to the meeting if certain staff members were present, because they were notorious, right, throughout Black and brown communities and the artist community, you know, in Indianapolis, to say really disrespectful, you know, really racist, problematic things, you know, whenever we would try to have these conversations. So the failure, you know, at the top, you know, of that institution was absolutely what I call this unwarranted arrogance. You know, so the idea was everybody should want to come play in our sandbox, right? Because we have these beautiful grounds, right? And we grow in tulips every 5 seconds. There was absolutely no respect or consideration to what the community was already doing, you know, artists as well as, you know, just regular everyday people. To end, you know, I think the other thing, you know, that the community has done really well, you know, post Charles's resignation, is really exposed the fact that there is absolutely no relationship with the people who live in the zip codes, right? That are like within the 5 mile radius. The Indy Star article, like, just really illuminating that, because that's not the outward narrative. And I think, that senior staff, as well as the trustees, they have their work, cut out for them, because they really are, out of their comfort zone, and they really are ignorant, to what needs to happen, for significant movement. And the failure is their inability, right, to decenter themselves in that process, and that's what I hope that they will do eventually. But that's really the failure, is that the senior, leadership just constantly, centered the institution without any kind of understanding, right, of how the institution is really problematic, right, for the overall arts community.
So in your opinion, and from your experience, what could those of us who are at the level that we're at here in this panel, we have these very tight-knit communities, we know a lot of people, and everybody here is trying to reach out to newer people. We're trying to engage new communities, and we're trying to kind of start to knit back the fabric of Indianapolis to include the voices that have historically always been here and been silenced. So how do we do that and influence organizations like Newfields and like our city politics that often feel so out of reach? I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I'll keep it here with you, Dr. Kelli. I did ask you.
Well, for me, the way that I've done it, even in Philly, right, I think, it works. And I did it in Birmingham too. I went to communities and said, what do you need from me? How can I help you? What are you already doing? Right. It's not about like, oh, I'm working on this exhibition. Do you want to write, help me write the labels? Right. Or I'm working on this acquisition. It was participating in what they were already doing, so, and, people have criticized me for this, over my career, but that required, me to be in their kids' schools, talking about, whatever the principal or whatever the teacher wanted me to talk about, meeting the kids, where they were, to talk to them or walk them through, through arts activities or history activities, right? To engage them in where they were, that required me to be at churches, on Sundays when I'm not a super, church person. But that was what was important to them, and so it's about, I think, in my experience, it's really about meeting people where they are and helping them with what they're already doing. And then once Absolutely. You do that for, long enough to build, a genuine relationship, then you can have the conversation of how, the two, like what you're doing, on the other hand, can meet in the middle, and you can produce something, really great.
Very, very helpful and very insightful. Jingo, what do you see coming from students? I mean, you have one foot in high school students and one foot in college students. So, what are you seeing? Where are they going to take our city?
I mean, it's tough to say, especially on a college level, because most of them who are not from Indy are like, oh, I'm just going to be here for, the next few years and I'll pack my bags again and be an artist somewhere else. And that's something that I discourage for sure, especially from someone who lives here and loves the city. And I'd like to think I'm invested in the city too. So there's still that mentality of like, okay, Indianapolis, it's not an artist community. The coastal cities are. So that's still the mindset of young people these days, which, in some ways they're not wrong at all. I mean, we have a lot of work to do here in this city in order for us to really put the arts as in the forefront of what we do around here. So it's kind of hard to put a pulse on it, but I've taken it as a responsibility to have them be involved as early as possible, even like right now. I mean, especially right now as a college student, these are the years. These are very formative years for them to get plugged in. I even invited them to watch this panel, and I don't know if they did.
Hopefully they're here. Yeah.
Hopefully they are. Show yourselves on the chat if you are. Extra credit. No, just kidding. No, and I believe these are the very important formative years for them to see what's around them, that they need to plant roots wherever they are. It doesn't matter how long you're going to be here. It matters that you, like what Dr. Morgan said, it's about establishing those relationships, no matter how long you'll be here, and investing in those roots.
Absolutely. I think that as we continue to, that's typically the area that's missing, right? Is getting to know the communities that you are going to be a part of, or that you're asking something of. And that middle part is really what we do not so well. And that is engaging or learning enough about someone, seeing what matters to them before we try to tell them what should matter to them, you know? So yeah, that's some really great insight. Let's see, where do we go from here? So I kind of feel like we have an opportunity as we come out of the pandemic to start to, Jingo, as you said, everybody kind of wants to jump back into getting back into it and getting back at it. But I think that there is also this like healing practice or part that needs to happen with all of us, that, you know, in the art community. And I think that we can focus on our community for a bit and the communities that we're a part of, just to kind of do a better job of asking each other how we're doing, you know, how it's good. I can't help but think that we're going to deal with a lot of trauma from this. So how do we support artists to let them know, yes, we were very reactionary last year, but now we understand things that we need to start laying the groundwork for. What is the best way that we can now start to reach out to our community and let them know we're here to support them? Open to anyone. Shauta, I see you reaching. Are you unmuting? Or you...
I was thinking about it, unless someone else wants to go first. You know, I think that, you know, what has happened with Dr. Kelli Morgan and Newfield's, also like smaller organizations like Big Car and all of us in town aren't above that, and we all have things to work on. So even though that was a bit of a spectacle, just not like there's things that Big Car has to do and has to work on itself, you know, because we're part of that system. And, you know, systems are also people. So, you know, and made up of people. So I think that, you know, I almost want to approach things going forward, like almost like how you'd have therapy, like couples therapy together, you know, like where arts organizations and artists almost have like couples therapy, because, you know, why art is so important to me and why artists are so important to me is it's like how I've learned about myself and how I've learned about the world. So I want to, like, going forward, not just think, well, you know, I'm great, everything's fine, I'm not Newfields. Well, I am. I'm part of the system that has been part of the problem and part of oppressing people. So let's work through that together, and you know, not to avoid artists who might call you out, or employees who might call you out. Like, that's like, being called out is good, because when it happens, there's an opportunity for growth, and don't cancel those artists, or, you know, just like come to them like you would in a relationship. Like, that's at least my plan going forward with artists post-pandemic.
I was gonna say, it's a similar thing, Shauta, right? Like, it's okay to not know. I think going forward, we definitely, at least I know that's something that I'm like implementing with a lot of people, around me, because like I said, now I'm kind of working nationally, right? So it's like, I'm still working in Indy, I'm still working, and I hadn't really ever stopped working in Philly. I'm working in Detroit right now with the DIA staff, action staff, so it's this whole conversation that we need to slow down. That it's okay to slow down, that we don't have, because that's a capitalist model, this kind of go, 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 go. And the more you go, the more you get, the more you can do, and it's like, it doesn't, that's not sustainable. Like, I think we're watching, right, the unsustainability, right, of that play itself out right now. I just think it would be really helpful, to adopt, to like genuinely, right, to adopt this culture of being able to say that, you just don't know. Like, even with everything that happened with Newfields, dude, it would have just been great if somebody, right, on the senior staff or somebody on the trust, that was a trustee that was just like, yeah, we have no idea like how to handle this. We have no idea what to do about this. I think that would have reigned true for so many of us, and even, my colleagues that are still there. And I mean, you can read they're like 30, what was it? They're like 10-page, 30-day plan or whatever, where it's like, here are all the words, right? We're going to say all the language, but there's no like context to it. So it's like, they've learned nothing, over these last, 2.5 months. And it's disappointing. So I think just to be able, for people to kind of step back, out of their power or sense of authority, or this need, to always be right, or to always know the way. This is completely uncharted territory for the country right now. It's a whole lot of people that don't know what they're doing, who I think needs to be able to say that they don't know what they're doing.
That's a really great point. I love the idea from Shauta and Dr. Morgan about slowing down and being willing to listen to those who are voicing the problem. Whether that's a problem for one person, and really just understanding where they're coming from, and if they are voicing concerns for a larger community, it's something that we all need to listen to. Lourenzo, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I will continue what Shauta and Dr. Kelli were saying. For me, the biggest piece would be genuine, right? If you feel as though this is an issue, be genuine about it. If you don't feel like it's an issue, be genuine about it as well. Like, as an organization, don't say all of the things because every other organization is saying all of the things and then not do the work. Like, no, that's stupid, right? And at this point, we are all aware of the ones who are just paying lip service, right, to all of the things that need to happen and things that need to get done. So I would say that. And then to 2 points that Jingo and Dr. Morgan said again, like, there is very much this piece of us believing that Indianapolis we have the ability to get things done in Indianapolis that we can't do anywhere else, which that is very much true. But there's also, once you get here and you start doing that work, you realize that there is that level of the authority, I guess you could put it, I don't know, some way, right? That kind of guard, yeah. Yes, that kind of controls how much of that work gets done. So it's infuriating because it is open enough to get the work done, but then there are people in the way to get the work done. And then the last piece would just be, I think the change is possible, but that old guard and that old authority, right, is so disconnected, and it happens with every single one of us, right? Like, as we start to move, and this is my own personal thing that I deal with every day, right? As you start to move up in the rung on the ladders, right, you get farther away from the issues that at hand that needs to be resolved. So how do you continue to have that connection of understanding that this is still the problem down here, even though I'm up here in some way, shape, or form, I need to be able to go down and understand the problem, or even I don't know the best way to do it, but just being connected back to truly understand like the issues that need to be fixed, because from a 30,000 view, what you're looking at as the issue isn't really the issue.
Very well said. Jingo, your thoughts?
Man, so many good insights. To me, I'm gonna wear my artist hat for now. But from an artist standpoint, I think the best way to move forward is to start trying to evolve and start trying new things. I think we all know that deep inside as artists that we need to like keep working on our craft and getting better. Because last year I lost all my contracts, got furloughed, didn't really know how to move forward from there. So I had to like force myself to try different things. And right now, I think that's probably the call to action for artists, is to be a little bit more versatile and to evolve. And I tell my students all the time, that's the goal as an artist, is to constantly evolve. You think of the greats like Prince and Beyonce, they're great because they evolve and because, yeah, they just reinvent themselves. They reinvent the wheel. And you don't have to wait for a catastrophe like a pandemic to change the way you work. Like you can do it right now, especially when things are comfortable and quiet. I mean, not saying that right now is comfortable and quiet. There's still things that we need to work through. But but when you get to that point, that's the best way to start. Just trying new things. Doesn't hurt.
Excellent. Well, as we get to our last 5 minutes, I want to say thank you again to each of you for providing your thoughts and really some beautiful insights that I think we can all take. Slow down, be genuine, talk to more people, evolve. And so I would like to just leave each of us with an opportunity to, talk about give your pitch, give your shameless plug. Where should we be looking for you? What should we be paying attention to in your world? And we'll kind of say goodbye on that note. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll work backwards. Jingo, go for it.
You can find me on Instagram. Handle is JingoIllo, JingoIllo. That's normally where I am. I'm pretty active on there, so yeah.
Excellent. We'll be sure to look for you there. Shauta? What are you working on, and what are you excited about, and where should we look for it?
Well, we have power plant grants, which is the application will close April 26th. So that grant is up to $10,000 for artist projects and artist run spaces. And that grant was made possible by the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts. And then we will reopen for the first Friday with timed entry, June 1st, with Natasha Vidger and Sarah Strong. One is an Indianapolis-based artist, and the other one is based in Ontario. And we have a lot going on. There's walk bike places if you're interested in placemaking. And just check out our website and Instagram, Big Car Pics, Tube Art Space. Those are our, and WQRT, the radio station as well.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Kelli, where can we keep up with you?
So much like Jingo, I am really active on IG right now. So my handle is at Ellie616. So it's my name without the K, ELLI 616 on IG. Doing a lot of activism, right now. Trying to create, better cultures, for museum workers. I'm advising, so I have a PAC, a Professional Alliance for Curators of Color, with the Association for Art Museum Curators. And I am curating the 190th, I think it is, annual for the National Academy of Design. So
Very
that's
cool.
coming in September. I'm super excited about that. And it's a digital annual. So the entire experience, will be like through a website. So it's really, really cool. I'm working with Link by Air, as the designers for that. So that is coming in September. So those are my three, big things right now.
So exciting. Excellent. And Lourenzo, where can we find you and what you're excited about?
I am, as much like everyone else, I'm on the socials. Handle is LGIPLE, which is first initial and last name. And I just continue the work that I do talking about urban issues, specifically as it relates to housing, and on this honestly understanding, helping people understand real estate development and the nature of it and how it's been used to perpetuate a lot of the issues that we have today. And just trying to find not necessarily solutions, but because these problems are larger than just simple solutions, but just trying to make people aware of them so that it's not just, if you see a connection that in every single community, the Black and brown community looks the way it does for a specific reason, that's just not a happenstance. That's a design thing that has happened, right? So helping people understand that it's larger than just, oh my God, just because I grew up here, no Black people were in my neighborhood for a reason. So
excellent and very important topic, and I'm glad that we've got you here to talk about it. Thank you all again for your part that you do in keeping the Indianapolis, Indiana, and national art and design community sustainable. I think that we can all learn a lot from these voices. So thank you so much. I greatly appreciate your time, and thank you to Indy Design Week. It was great to be a part of it. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you.